Hello, my name is Trisha from True Influence, and today I'm speaking with VP of Marketing, Terry Arnold. Terry is a tenured leader and passionate about integrated digital marketing and the application of digital solutions to drive customer engagement. For over 28 years, he has held leadership positions, guiding customers and mentoring vertically based sales organizations about the integration of these digital media solutions, specifically demand generation. So Terry, thank you for being here. And let's start off with, what does account-based engagement mean to you?
It's an interesting question because, there's been a lot of talk about, account-based marketing, right? And when you look at the way that ABM has evolved, account-based engagement is really sort of version 2.0. Because if you think about marketing from the classic context, right? It's about planning your audience, creating messaging, creating language in order to create content, to communicate with the universe, in order to get a response, right? That's sort of traditional marketing. And ABM, for the most part, has really wrapped itself around that, but in a very specific way, meaning that we're going after an account, someone that we either have a relationship with or, one that we desire to have a relationship with. Account-based engagement is really that next level. It's really about how do we engage with them over time. So it's not just this one carefully planned, deliberate message. It's really about a carefully planned, deliberate engagement, which happens over time. And it's really a nice way to begin to start to look at how do we advance this cause of, pulling things together in order to build relationships for sales. But how do we begin to think about continuing that dialogue and continuing it with it in a meaningful way, which is actually going to build a relationship and ultimately, opportunities for sales to not only land, but of course, expand within an organization to, not only sell more products, but essentially solve more problems, which is really what long-term engagement is really all about from a sales perspective.
It's a really unique perspective too, because you're speaking about that next step and hearing your view that it's not just this one top line of how can I build all these different things to make sure that my accounts are marketed to, but it's asking for that response, and then in turn makes whoever is running account-based engagement look at the response, look at the data, look at whatever is happening and taking that next step.
And it is all about evolution, right? It's about how do we iterate what we're doing to get better. Everything in our life works out that way. I mean, as we grow up and we mature, we get better, we iterate on top of things to make things better. And, that's what this is all about. And that's what business is constantly looking for, right? How do we take our current circumstances and the environment that we're in and make it better in order that we can get increasingly better results? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So in making it better, that you can identify who you're speaking to, that you get to have these personal messages, that you get to have a relationship that you're building. We know that comes from using data, and specifically that we get to use intent data to make sure that we're hearing our customers speaking back and engaging. So can you unpack what account-based engagement challenges that intent data can solve?
Yeah, it's the challenge to be relevant. It's as simple as that, right? So what everybody is really trying to do is create this relevant conversation, because the reality is I pay attention to things that I care about. It could be my personal interests, it could be my hobbies, it could be my business roles. I'm only engaged in things that are relevant to me. And intent data is one mechanism that allows people to figure out who is interested in this particular topic. Why? Because they're engaging with that content online. They're starting to see organizations. Intent data gives you this lens to say, well, what organizations seem to be most interested in these types of topics. And once you're able to really start to hone in on that, it's really the foundation, right? So who do we want to engage with? Well, we want to engage with people who are interested in the kind of content or the kind of products that we sell or the kind of conversation that we're having. And intent data really helps cut through that clutter, because, traditionally what most people had to use was classic persona data. There's nothing wrong with that, right? It's a great place to start. But again, it's another iteration of the persona, which is, what are these people actually engaging with, and where are we starting to see residue, right, of where they've showed up and where they've spent time and what they've looked at and what they've read. Intent data solves that problem. And it really makes, account-based engagement possible. It really allows us to iterate upon what the traditional ABM was doing in the past.
Well, it's taking that concept of what you said at the beginning, like you engage with things that you're interested in, whether that's personally, professionally, and the
Yeah.
idea that we get to build our professional like interests around like what our job is, what we do, what's necessary for us to move forward in our organizations to help at the end result of our companies, right? Every person in business, especially in B2B, is doing that. And so
Yeah.
getting to look at that relevance of, okay, it might not be my personal interest, but what does my professional interest say? Like, what do I need to do to get the job done? And where am I looking? Where am I researching? What am I investigating to understand about the problems that I'm solving and we are solving inside my specific department, not even just my company, my department.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. And one of the things that you start talking about being relevant, and it's interesting because, when we think about relevance, I mean, let's say you're a marketer, right? And you're talking about relevance of your product, right? And so we're saying, well, this is what our product does. This is its feature set. And these are the business issues that it solves. And marketers oftentimes think, well, if I can just communicate that well, right? So people will be attracted to me because, our products are different, they're better, they're functional, they solve problems. It's a lot more than that, right? So what we've come to know, and Forrester's been talking about this for a long time, there's the buying committee and there's individuals that have a responsibility to weigh in on, does this product actually meet the requirements of our organization, right? And one of the things that's interesting in that perspective is everybody's got a different lens, right? So the finance person, when they're looking at a product, they don't care about its features and its functionality. And if it solves business problems, they're interested, does it pay off, right? Does it actually, for the investment that I'm going to make in this, does it actually return value to the organization? That could be revenue, it could be, cost savings, reductions, it could be all of those different things. But that's a very unique lens, right? That finance person is solving for, which is different than anybody else's lens, right? So again, to take someone who's buying, an HR software package, the HR person is concerned about, does it work, right? Does it actually make my life better? When I come in each day and I fulfill my tasks that are associated with HR, does it make it easier, right? Security and compliance person's concerned about, does it protect our data, right? Because I've got requirements that I need to measure up to be sure that all my employee data is effectively managed and it has to be compliant. So, when you talk about account-based engagement and you talk about ABM, right, in the iteration of what ABE is, right, it's now starting to think about the lens in which we have to communicate. And that relationship is on that level. It has to be on that level to be relevant, to be interesting, which is the precursors to engagement, right? You can't have engagement if you're not relevant and you're speaking to them in a lens which makes sense to them, that they're interested in listening to. So that's a critical component as well that ABE actually takes into account.
Well, and you're speaking about something that you mentioned at the Truth Matters Summit, how data accelerates revenue, that True Influence got to host recently about this relevant message. And that I love that example of HR and saying, okay, what does HR use it for? Yes, but what does IT use it for? And talking about that role level messaging and that lens, digging it down deep into it. I love taking that step back though. So that need for role level messaging is key, but also how do people identify that? That takes some work to understand what your lenses are. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of that is, of course, when you're building your audiences and you understand who the buying community is, everybody's got a seat. And we know that decisions are made along those different lenses which people use. And obviously, when you're constructing your audiences and you're beginning to create your cadences, it's really all about setting that up on the front end. And obviously, using data that you might have, first party data, for example, helps you really understand the organization that you currently have a relationship. First party data is data that you own, right? You have the permission to use it because you've asked for it and they've given it to you. And when you're utilizing that data to begin to execute campaigns, right, we obviously do it through those lenses. But the other thing that people are doing, and we talked a lot about this at the summit, is about building out lookalike audiences. We call them initiatives where the customer is augmenting that particular audience. And what it does, it gives you visibility into organizations that look and feel a lot like your existing customers, but you don't own them yet. So what we do is then augment those audiences with all the different elements that are part of the buying community, and then allow them to give them a new lens through which they can communicate to that same audience and drive incredible results. And we talked a lot about that at the summit. Obviously, it was a topic that fit a lot of the different swim lanes that we had there, about IT and security of data, and as well as in the marketing pieces that we had shared there as well.
Mm-hmm. And speaking about this first party data as well, and how the need for that helps you understand those different lenses, those different roles. Quite frankly, our landscape is constantly changing though, right? So you're always going to know that somebody's first party data might shift. Of that professional profile is the same person, but they might have a different job. They might have a different description. And can you talk about what that true value of first party data is when this landscape is changing?
Yeah, I mean, the value of it is, I know who was there? So it was Theresa Kushner mm-hmm. had talked about the fact that, first party data is an asset, and people really haven't been looking at it that way. Essentially, it's a fingerprint, if you will, of your customer and your unique relationship with them. And everybody has a role. We all need to look at ourselves as sort of data stewards, right? So how do we steward that data? Because it is critically important to us to understand not only the relationship we have with existing customers, right? And the lenses that we have to look through as we sort of manage and grow and nurture those relationships, but it is the lens that allows us to understand other organizations who are currently not our customers that we can begin to look at in order to begin to target and expand our universe with customers that we like to serve. So, and there's so much going on in that space. I could go on for hours. So one of the things that people really need to pay attention to, the pandemic had really caused some challenges, particularly in marketing organizations and advertising. There's a lot of people who aren't there anymore, and those roles and responsibilities still need to be completed. And as everything's getting back to business, at least here in North America, it's important to figure out who those people are, and because the rate at which your data degrades is pretty quick. I mean, what did Tony say? It's like fruit on the fruit stand, right? So it's not getting any riper, right? So that's an important thing to think about. And that's your first party data. That's your asset. And you need to really be thinking about, how do I take care of that, protect it, secure it, and then augment it and grow it and take advantage of what you have there to help grow your business. Super important. Yeah.
To get to that final point of engagement, of relationship, of a back and forth. I love the term engagement too, because it requires participation on both sides. It's not just there's one mouthpiece, there's one stream of information coming up one way, but it's looking at this piece of fruit and saying, wow, this is ripe. Okay, let's do something with it. Let's make a pie before it goes bad. So how can we have that relationship with the customer?
Yeah, and that's classic. I mean, that's what a salesperson does, right? And so they build a relationship. People buy from people who are in relationship, and that's engagement, right? And so that needs to show up in marketing in terms of the way that we plan, the way that we build out our audiences, and the way that we plan to engage over time. It's very similar. It's nice that marketing, I think, has really grabbed a hold of that now, and it really is trying to build strategies which really optimize engagement.
So talking about strategies and building this, have we been able to see at Sure Influence with our customers that experience of using intent data successfully to have that relationship with customers? Can you shed any stories on that?
Yeah, there's been a bunch. We talked about these actually post-summit. We had an event where someone brought some ideas to the table, and we have a company, a customer that is in sort of the medical device arena, and they have got different levels of individuals that are making decisions around their products, right? And so take, for example, some of the medical ones. Not only do you have a physician who's involved in that, but we also have HIPAA compliant individuals who are talking about how do we protect that data. You've got technology people who are thinking about how does that data, or how does that particular product interface with all the other products that we have. And if you, matter of fact, you go into a doctor's office or you go into a hospital, right? All that stuff is wirelessly connected, right? And so all that data is moving wirelessly through the hospital around monitors and different types of devices to be able to communicate. And so one of the things that we're able to do with our customers is sit down and say, let's use intent to really begin to frame out not only who those individuals are that are engaging with content, but then let's build the buying groups by using that. And for this particular customer, they have a lot of products in the medical device industry and a lot of different types of decision-making authority. Doctors are involved in there, physician assistants are involved in it. People who man the nurse's station are looking at monitors, and they have a specific lens that they look through. And we were able to build out for them audiences that got very niche to help them really understand who these individuals were and how to market to them. And that's one of the first things I had done when I joined True Influence. I worked in operations here. And I spent a lot of time, in the trenches. And this was, I'm a geek, I'm a marketing geek at heart, right? And so I really got a big charge out of working with this particular customer and fleshing out these audiences. It really helped me understand what's possible. And it was nice to be thinking, from an innovation standpoint and being able to think, what are these new ideas that we can bring to the table to define audiences? And then it really exposed me to all those lenses, which we've been talking about. And I didn't imagine there were so many conversations that we could have with people to help influence, their thoughts, feelings, or desire for the products that our customer was trying to market. So I get geeky about that stuff. It's a lot of fun.
I love it. I love that you get geeky. You should be VP of marketing. That's exactly where you're supposed to be.
It's so fun. It's so fun.
Thanks for sharing today and being a part of this conversation. If you all listening would like to know more about True Influence and our solutions, you can visit us at trueinfluence.com.